Hey everyone, welcome back to another one of our mini workshops. This is going to be given by Emily Craven, our amazing CEO and brain mother of Story City. This workshop is titled How to Test Your Stories. So without further ado, Emily, show us how the tools work.
Beautiful. Thanks, friends. So you have built this lovely story. You've picked all of these beautiful locations. Now you need to see what is it going to look like in the app. You've loaded stuff into the creator tools and you're like, okay, I need to understand like what does this what does this look like? Right? But not only what does this look like, are all of these stories actually going to trigger correctly? Because if any of you attended the Pathways mini workshop, you'll know that GPS can be a problem. Tall buildings can affect it, being near valleys can affect it. And so we need to make sure that our locations actually trigger and register properly in maps. And if they don't, there are various ways that we then need to do to fix that. And so if I share my screen here, what you're going to see here is that we have our creator tools, and then we have what the app looks like. And so you'll notice here that the profile picture here and the profile picture on the back end of the creator tools, they match because I am logged in with my creator account into Story City. And so that means that when I tap into my library, not only can I see any adventures or stories that I literally went on, but I can also see all of my stories that I have in draft mode. So these are not available to the public. The only people who can see them is me as the creator, right? And so that's why I want to make sure that I am logged in under my creator account for Story City in the app before we get started. And so if we go into our creator menu,
Emily, quickly, can I ask a question?
you can.
So the creator tools are only accessible via the a computer, right? And so this tool over here, I can't access the creator tools at all through the mobile app.
You cannot. No.
Okay.
So the creator tools are only desktop. You can log in on a browser, but they are not mobile optimized. So it's going to look very weird. If you maybe have like a tablet that's GPS enabled and like can hotspot to your phone, that might be able to show an okay version of the creator tools as you're walking around. But like as you are testing things, there are two phases that you'll go through. One is to test things in what we term spoiler mode. And so spoiler mode allows you to sit in the create-a-thon venue and literally just tap through all of your bits and pieces so that you can make sure that everything looks good on a screen, that you've loaded the right audio in, that you've loaded the right images in, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that you can adjust and adapt for that. And then the second thing that you're going to then do is hit the streets and be like, what are the potential problem locations that might not trigger properly? Right?
Got it.
And
Okay, yeah, that
so
makes sense.
when you go out for that second one, you are going to have to keep a notepad on you or your notes app on your phone, and you're going to have to note when you run into an issue with one of those locations. Oh, I put it on the wrong street corner. This is showing me as being the next street over, so I'm going to have to adapt how I've set this up. All of those kind of things, right? But it's also important to like eat your own dog food, right? If you're walking from point A to point B and you're like, man, this was much further than I thought it was, right? Only you testing that is going to allow us to know that,
Hmm.
right? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my lovely little test story that I made the other day in one of our 101s. It's an alien pretend kind of like alien adventure thing. And if I then go into our chapters here, I can see all of the different locations that I have set up. I've got some endings. I have a start point. I've got the middle points. And then over here, I've got some content in that first chapter so that we can kind of test it. And then I have it in my creator stories, my alien adventure story. So I'm just going to tap on that here. And then the important thing to note is that if I just want to check the content while I'm sitting in my create-a-thon venue, I'm going to have to go into my story settings and make sure that I turn on spoiler mode. That's the thing that's going to allow me to tap through the story while I'm sitting there. And so you'll notice that in spoiler mode, if I can actually reset my story. So I'm going to reset it using those settings at the start. I just want to set it back to the start of the story. So you'll notice that in spoiler mode, it's allowing me to start the story. The button is orange. So I can tap on that and it's going to load my first chapter. I can test and tap on my play audio button to be like, have I uploaded the right audio? I can make sure that my feature image is there. I can look at my other images on the page. I can check my pop-up modals to make sure that they're loading properly. And then I can open my map and be like, okay, what's my next chapter? Oh, that's right. My next chapter is not another location. I've put a little bit of an interaction in there where I have hit I agree. And so I'm going to tap that button to make sure that that loads. And then in the next section, I'm going to zoom out and see where my next location is from where I am. So I can kind of check all of those things on the map, make sure I've connected it to the right places, that I have the right buttons at the bottom, that my buttons say the right things, that the video plays, that the audio plays, all of those kind of things. And if I need to make any changes, all I would do is go into these editor content sections. I would add in my extra dialogue and things. And then I would head back to the start page. I would reset my story back to the start. And then I would go back in and it would reload that page to show me the new. I've now got my new additional bit of text in there, for example, or I've changed my image. So you will kind of go back and forth between these two, going to the creator tools, going back to the screen to make sure that it's displaying in the way that you want it to. So that's part one. We're just making sure all the content works, that we've loaded it in properly, that it's looking the way we're hoping that it's going to look, all of that kind of thing, right? But part two of testing my story is that I then need to go out into the physical realm and make sure that my locations are triggering, right? And so for me to do that, I can't be in spoiler mode anymore. I have to turn that off. And when I turn that off, it means that once I reset my story to the start point, that button is no longer orange and it doesn't allow me to click it anymore. It's telling me that I have to navigate to the start of the story, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out of my Create-a-thon location. I'm going to walk to where my start location is. And then when I reach that location, what should happen is that this blue button should turn orange, which means that it has detected that I'm in the right spot. It is allowing me to move forward and start that story, right? So for the moment here, because I'm not in that downtown location, I'm just going to put my spoiler mode on and I'm going to hit start story. But if I turn my spoiler mode off again, our next chapter, because it didn't have a location, so you can see here that our first chapter had a location, but our second chapter didn't. I can just hit I agree because it's orange. But we can see that to get from my second location to my third location, it's asking me to navigate. It's asking me to navigate to that second intermediary chapter. So I would then pop up my map. I would then see where I was. I would then walk to that next chapter or drive to that next chapter or cycle to that next chapter. That button is then going to go from blue to orange. And then once it's orange, I know that I have hit the right GPS location. It has unlocked and I can tap it to go to the next piece. So if you come to a location and you're like, I'm standing in the right spot, I can see it on my map, I'm literally standing on the dot and it is not triggering, it's not turning orange. What that would generally mean is that when you have set up your locations, you have made the size of this invisible fence around your pin too small. to trigger in that spot. The GPS isn't picking it up. There's probably a bit of interference in that area, which means that you will have to make the radius of that spot bigger, right? Generally is what that will be. But that doesn't help you when you're out in the field and you can't use the tools on your mobile app. So how do I move on to the next location? We can switch our spoiler mode back on just so that we can unstick ourselves and see the next stories. And then we're going to return spoiler mode off. It's going to turn it back into us having to physically walk to that next spot on the map. And so we are then going to walk to that next spot and test it. Now, this is much easier if your story is just a linear story. You're going from point A to B to C to D. But if you have a choose your own adventure or a branching narrative, you can't go and walk all 4 of those locations. And so what my suggestion would be is to test only the locations that you think will be a problem, right? The ones by super tall buildings, ones that might be in a particular dead zone. And so what you can do is that you can kind of test one pathway in the app, but then with the other pathways, I would just bring up Google Maps and make sure that the blue dot is showing you in the right place and isn't throwing you one street over, right? Google Maps will tell you very quickly whether or not you're in, or iMaps will tell you very quickly whether or not it's registering the GPS properly on that section. And so, as I said, there's a couple of ways that you can fix it. One is to increase this radius here so that it makes it easier for it to trigger. If it's the problem where it's throwing you to a completely different street, right? In that case, you would want to remove the location from that, or you would want to set up a duplicate chapter, and you would have one that's set to the location so that people know where they're going, and then one that is set to a duplicate of that location, where you don't put a location on it. You leave the location blank, so that means that when they walk to the location, so they can see the dot on the map, they walk there, but then they touch the button that allows them to move forward. So those would be the ways that you would fix that.
Can I ask, Emily, how you would do that duplicate location, like on the tool?
Yeah, so you would essentially add a new chapter. You would call it second, second intermediary 2, right? We won't set a location for it. So this chapter 2 was going to this 3rd location in here. So we've got that 3rd location. We've got our duplicate of that. We would want to go into the editor contents and duplicate the content. We would redrop the same text in there, redrop the same image in there, etc.
Sure,
yeah. And then what we would do is we would connect not only to the original, but we would also connect to our duplicate chapter. All except on our duplicate chapter, we would change that button to say map not registering your location, ? Click here.
Okay. So
And
you basically just create another chapter that is like a ghost chapter so that you can continue.
Correct, exactly. So that would be how you would fix any issues with that. So if we went out here, we reset our story, return our spoiler mode on. I'm going to tap through my first chapter. And then here, if I turn my spoiler mode off, for saying navigate to second intermediary, great. We navigate to the second intermediary, wonderful. Oh, look, map not registering your location. And so that would be what you would see on the app.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So those are the quickest ways to test if you have any location issues, but also to test what does something look like from the creator tools to the app itself, and how does that then mesh. Some of you may have been watching this video and thinking to yourself, oh God, I don't understand how these tools work. Well, funnily enough, we recorded a recap video of the 101 where we showed you how to use these tools. And if you came to the Friday kickoff, you should have also gotten a mini refresher on that as well. So I would revisit the 101 video to be able to see how these tools go together. And then when it comes to testing these tools, this will make a lot more sense.
Fantastic.
Beautiful.